Okay, so we've got episode 3 of the Perth Property Loop. And today we're doing a controversial podcast because it's the bane of Blake's existence in our office that I bring up all the time, that Robyn was right. And I guess it's predictions of the market and what's happened over the last 3 years. And I've got it right for the last 3 years. I've actually got it right and you have not got it right, which is interesting. As a valuer, that valuers weren't able to predict what's happened over the last couple of years.
Yep, I'll claim that. Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So I think that, the thing we're talking about today is going to be on what's happened over the last 3 years, what's happening now, and what we think is going to happen over the next year or two. So we'll kick it off with...
But before you do that, I'll give you credit. Yes, you did predict this, whether it's by luck or
definitely was
professional
luck.
acumen, you nailed it.
I think it was definitely just intuition that this was all going to happen. So I basically predicted... We'll start with the first one. So the first one is a bit of a trauma for me because Blake actually cost me $300,000. Now, to be fair, I probably wouldn't have bought it, but I like to just say that I did.
Yeah, like to rub salt in the
Yeah,
wound.
I like to just rub the salt in the wound just a little bit.
Yep.
But I was planning on buying a little townhouse on Herdsman Parade, and it was just a 2-bedroom townhouse. I could have got it for $400,000. And Blake's like, don't buy a Herdsman Parade Wembley apartment. That is the shittest thing. Do not buy it. And I was like, but Blake, I think that the rental, I think the apartments are going to go up by $200,000. He's like, you are ridiculous. Not going to happen.
Yep.
So I want to know, why did you get it wrong?
Oh, okay. So life as a value for 20 years. Never in my life have I seen a flat in Herdsman Parade go up in value. Sustained over the long term. I guess what I didn't realise is Perth was probably going to double in, I guess when we talked about this, probably 2 years ago maybe?
Yeah.
We just didn't expect to see the median go from whatever it was, 570 to pushing $1 billion in such a short amount of time. And I think where units have really been tested and that, those flats in Herdsman Parade, affordability has driven the rise in apartment values or unit values.
But it's a great area. Wembley is...
And you're right. There were some good parts to that.
Yeah.
But I think just the affordability element, the lack of supply and purely rents. I mean, you can't rent that apartment in Herdsman Parade for under $600 a week for $200.
Oh, you're talking $650, $700 for that place. It's
that
crazy.
Was like $350 a week max. So just on that basis, positively geared asset. But going back to fundamental principles that goes against my investment ethos was in theory, buildings depreciate, looking at a 1960s flat versus something with a land component like a villa. But no, totally got you wrong. And I'm sure I'll keep hearing about it for the next 10 years.
That actually hurt when that happened. So I wish I bought it, but I think that every investor has that. Oh, I wish I bought 5, but nobody knows what's going to happen. And
No, but I think I'll let you down because I was with conviction, do not buy that unit. So
it is where it is. It's fine. I'm getting over it.
Oh, it's good. I'm glad. So.
All right. So my next prediction that I made was that we're going to have 8,000 on the market by August this year. And it was in November.
So I remember that conversation you were having with someone, a very, very well-regarded property commentator.
It was a heated conversation.
And when you have a bee in your bonnet, you definitely deliver your message. But I think everybody was looking at you like you're crazy. But to be fair... You've nailed, I don't know where you got 8,000 properties in the market from, but that's literally where we're sitting right now. We're pretty close.
7,000, yeah. I remember we went to a building event where there was a bunch of builders and they were like, you're so wrong. There's such a lack of supply in the market, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen. And they all were looking at me like I've just,
Well,
I was silly.
All it took was a bit of Labor tax policy. It sapped the confidence out of the market, and here we are.
And it was only in January, I think, that there was that highly regarded valuer, and he was like, no, it's not going to affect Perth. You are talking rubbish. And Blake was like, Robyn, stop. And I was like, I'm telling you, we're going to have more. And it's happened.
Yeah, no, so that's your claim to fame for a while. You predicted the turn, but
And does that mean, I guess, talking around that, does that mean something's wrong? Is there something wrong?
No, I don't think it's anything wrong.
Are we going to see a crash? Is this normal? What's...
I don't know. Look, all I can... been valuing property for 20 years. I've seen 3 cycles where we've had these runs and they've crashed, and it's always been different reasons, right? So you just... And again, this reason is purely like Perth had green shoots coming into COVID. So we were recovering before COVID and all the stimulus and lockdowns and, you know, all this money being trapped in the state that had to go somewhere happened, and mass migration into WA on the chase of wages. Like, we were going to have that run. But we went through 6 years of sustained growth. Other capital cities like Sydney and Melbourne were coming off for different reasons. You know, we kept running. Affordability was driving it. But all it takes is, you know, property just runs on confidence. And as soon as the confidence is zapped from the market, that's what's going to happen. So like I said, all it takes is Labor tax policy. You take CGT concessions and negative gearing off the table, take away those incentives for investors to buy property. You know, you're pretty much going to take out 30 to 40% of your buy pool overnight, which is exactly what it's done. I think it's shocked the market. You know, it's put vendors that are itchy. They don't know what's going to happen. We've had a good run. I've doubled my money. Do I capitalise on it and sell? It's just triggered that snowball effect. So
I just don't agree with you, though. We've talked about this. I feel like the investors are not the ones selling. We're actually not losing that many. I actually think it's the owner-occupiers that have property in Alkmaar. And I'm like, they think they're the experts because they went and bought this property for like 500,000. It's now worth $1 million. And they're like, I've just made 500,000. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rent I'm going to move out of that property. I'm going to sell it. And then I'm going to go and rent for a year or two, watch the market crash. Yeah. And then I'm going to buy again. I'm like, you are an idiot.
Yeah. Well, I think anyone who's thinking of selling is either nervous. They don't know what's going to happen. They're worried about losing what they've built so far. Or you have someone who might be thinking, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. It was like it was COVID in the share market. You know, everything was belted 30, 40%. I'll buy now while it's low and ride it on the way up. But yeah, there's risks and rewards in both strategy. But I think anyone who's selling now because they're fearful of where the market's going to head, unless you've got to sell because you're under pressure financially because your interest rates have doubled or tripled to what you bought them at, and it's just hard to hold on to it. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair sell. Capitalise on your gains and sell, take the pressure off. But I think anyone who's in a good financial position with equity under the belt, we're in a rising rental market, you know, I think just be careful. Perth still has room to grow and still has room for growth. When we see it and how we see it, who knows? Honestly, Labor could backflip on these tax policies. There is so much negative political heat on this. You just don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, would you want to sell now? One thing I'll just hold until the day I die is that the investors or the conspiracy theorists, the fearmongers of investors out there, I'm waiting for Perth to crash, is just going to be really disappointed. So if you're thinking...
Even if it goes down by 10, 15, 20%, if you go and buy again, you're going to be paying stamp duty again.
That's it,
You're going to be paying rent on someone else's mortgage, moving costs. Yeah. There's so many things that you need to think about.
That's the worst decision you can make. So if you're property flipping, so it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're buying something to make money to sell, or you're selling to rent and buy at a lower cost base or wait for the market to correct, you need to see the correction up or down by at least 15% to make that worth it. Because you've got acquisition costs, you've got disposal costs, you've got interest on your holding period, all of that stuff will cost you between 10 and 15% at a minimum. So
I agree.
Pretty risky.
And I guess we talked about it, and we have a connection with a lot of sales agents. And I think that, there was a moment that the buyers paused. And I said to you, I'm like, but there's all these owner-occupiers. They're still just living in their mum's spare room. And they haven't disappeared. They just don't want to be the last one that falls on the sword. Yeah. And I think that... I've spoken to a few sales agents recently, and they're like, buyers are now starting to buy again. And it was only a 2-month blip. But the thing is that evidence doesn't come out until later. So the evidence of what happened in the budget is happening now and over next month. So we're going to see, oh my gosh, the market's gone down by 10% because of what happened in those few months. Yeah. But I think it's going to flip.
The last quarter at Perth, we're one of the only capital cities that actually shown a net positive growth over the last 3 months of 0.7%. Most of the country's in decline. So, it's just, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think...
I don't know, these periods are always shock periods. So whenever there's a shock period, we really don't know what's happening. We've just got to see what happens over the next 6 months. But whenever these things happen, all it does is kick demand down the road. It just defers decisions. It doesn't stop the decisions most of the time, because whoever's living with their mum and dad eventually wants to move out. You know? Whoever's living in a shared house and they end up with a couple and then kids are on the way, they eventually need to find their own house. Whether they rent or buy, you can't delay decisions forever. They just kick it down the road, and so who knows?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think that my prediction over the next couple of months, and from speaking with sales agents that have got feet on the ground, is that I do think that the results are going to show in August and September, as you know, that we're not growing or maybe we're in a loss. But I do think because of the activity happening now in August, that's not going to show until October, November because of the settlement delays. That I do think, that they're getting back in the market, and I don't think I think it's just a shock. You said it's a shock?
It's a shock. Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And I just can't really see it correcting or going down much, if at all. You know, with the migration coming into the state, we just can't build enough. And what's really interesting, like building approvals are up 25%, but that's the approval is just an approval. That doesn't mean a slab's going on the ground. And approvals can often be across multiple asset classes like commercial, data centres, then you've got residential housing in there as well. We're still short about 30,000 houses a year to meet current supply with migration and natural population growth. We're just not building enough. And it's getting harder and harder for developers or people just trying to build house and land stock to justify the financial viability or the commercial viability of these projects, whether it's just building a house in Two Rocks or building an apartment tower in the city of Same. The end product is potentially the growth has stopped or might slightly go the other way, but the cost to build it is still going up.
Yeah. So, and I think something I guess that I see on the bottom of the market, being in the rental side of things, I do believe that the sale market does follow the rental market a little bit.
For sure.
And I think that with rentals, we're moving into migration season. And anyone that knows me, they hear me talking about my migration season. Everybody says that there's not a better time to lease a property. I disagree. I actually think that the best time to lease a property is between that November and February time, just because you've got doctors coming over, because that's when the medical year starts. Yep. You have the naval bases, the army and things where they're moving, they do their relocations around that time. Defense, that's the word. Yeah. And then you also have people wanting to get their kids into school. Yep. A lot of people from the UK, they'll come just before or just after Christmas for whatever reason. They want to do a summer in Perth, or they want to be with their family back home in the UK. That it is just that time. A lot of businesses, they do their changeovers at that time of the year, their relocations. The relocation agents come out in force at that time of the year. And especially with executive property, that my worry right now is that I think what's going to be in the news in that November time, and we can quote that when it is in the news, is that we're going to be like, oh my gosh, we've only got 1,500 rentals in Perth. We're like at a shortage. Yeah. And it's like, no shit. Like the government just did what they did, and now we've got no rentals. Like, of course we don't.
Oh, it's going to be a disaster.
It's going to be a disaster.
But you are so right. Like, I mean, the residential sales market has always followed rental markets, but in a normal market, at least the markets I've seen in the last 20 years, if you didn't like what's happening in the sales market, the purchase market was it was too hot, you couldn't find the stock you want, it was going too rapidly, you wanted to wait for it to cool off, you could just hide out in the rental market. You could get a rental, and in Perth was always historically affordable. I remember thinking about renting our place out and renting a bigger house in City Beach. You could rent that on a 1.5% yield. Why would you buy it? On interest only, it'd be still half or a quarter of the price. So that was really attractive. But now you can't do that. You're still in a market where rents are, 3%, vacancy 2.5% at the moment.
Oh, I don't even know. It's low.
Well, it depends where you get your data too. But either way, it's still really difficult to get a rental. It's expensive, and it's still really difficult to buy. It's also expensive. So you're into really hot markets. So if the rental market gets hotter, which I think it will after these tax changes, because the 40% of those investors, I do think the new investment, I reckon a lot of that's gone. There will be investors in the marketplace that always want property as part of their strategy. Will they buy residential? Will they go to commercial markets? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I just think it's a seesaw. I always say it's like a seesaw, and there's only so much supply amongst the sale and rental market. So if collectively we have 8,000 properties between sale and rental, there's 8,000 homes available for people to live in. But all that's happened is not a balanced market of sales and rentals. It's just done this. There's more sales and less rentals. Yeah. And it's going to be scary, unfortunately, for those people that are in the rental market, and they are long-term renters. They've been renting for the last 20 years. It's actually quite sad.
Yeah. Oh, it's brutal. I mean, we see it firsthand in the business every day, like how desperate it can be for some of our tenants. And It's just the reality is I just can't see it getting any easier or
and
any
the banks
better.
aren't turning around to the to the owners and saying it's okay, you're a great landlord and you've got a tenant for the last 20 years, we're going to incentivize you. They are basically saying
100%.
we're going to increase the rates, we're going to increase your tax, we're going to increase this, and then what are they supposed to do, just be a charity? Like the government needs to be helping here.
The balance is on the other side. A landlord in Perth, if you bought a property in 2013, 2014, you got to see your equity erode for a solid 6 years before COVID, and you were probably at least 10%, probably somewhere to 20% down on what you paid for it. And you were sometimes some of our landlords were in negative equity. They were holding onto the property because they were forced to hold onto it. Then COVID happened and they just got lucky. But they need to recover some of those losses as well. It just has to work. Worst thing that can happen to Australia as a country is we disincentivize, which has just happened. Mums and dads, first-time buyers, to buy a property, rent it out, invest as a wealth creation strategy, because we need that rental stock for people in the market to actually have renting as an option. If you don't have the rental homes, the landlords stop buying. What happens?
Exactly. And something that I always say to, I guess, over East people, because I think everyone, maybe, they just don't understand if they don't live here. You will see people that have a property, they're renting a property close to the airport, in one of the suburbs close to the airport, because it's convenient, because they work in mining, and they moved here, they're Irish, they're from New Zealand, they're from somewhere, and they're earning 250 grand a year, and their plan always was, I'm just going to move to Perth, I'm going to work there for 3 years, I'm going to rack up my bank account, and then I'm going to go back to my own country, because I don't want to stay in Perth.
Yeah.
And then they go and buy a jet ski, and they go and buy a boat, and it's so funny that you're driving through these suburbs that are rental suburbs, and there's boats and jet skis on the driveways and Ford Rangers, and they haven't bought a house.
Yeah.
And I just say it's the only state where you can have people in those positions, I think, where, they're still on visas or they can't buy for whatever reason. And I think that's the advantage that landlords have on the rental yields in having those are the type of tenants that you're getting.
I love Western Australia. When the boom times are here, our discretionary spending goes, and the jet skis are always a sign of that. So, good times, And
I also think because we have had so much migration in Perth, even with the mining that we've got going on, the amount of infrastructure that we've had to have in Perth.
Well, Perth's a much bigger city. So when we last had this sort of market cycle, was like mining boom times, 2005, 2006, so 20 years ago. The economy in Western Australia is much more diverse and bigger than it was 20 years ago. I mean, mining's still a big part of it, but civil, construction, engineering, property, like this defence and AUKUS and all of these projects that are kicking off or potentially kicking off have the capacity to deliver so much more investment into Western Australia than mining has done in the last 10 years. And so, there's a lot going on now, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so something, I was looking at buying a property in Melbourne. I have lots of big ideas.
I think I claimed this one, right?
You did, but also I actually was speaking to a buyer's agent over there, and obviously he's a sales agent. I didn't really know him. It was just through someone else. It wasn't someone I knew, to be fair, but they're not a referral partner or anything. But I was skeptical. So what did I do? I called the property manager and I said, who's renting these properties? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's happening over there? And she's like, nah, there's no migration. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, we've got vacancies for days.
If you want raw, unfiltered advice, call a local property manager.
Yeah.
Now that I get 100%, that's where you get it. But look, the hard thing with Melbourne, like, it's a state that's basically bankrupt after COVID. Like, it's, there's just not enough money in the state. That's why their property taxing is so bad, because they need to raise revenue to be able to fund the state. It's a nightmare. So speculated investment that's going to Melbourne because it's cheap and they think it's going to go up, watch out. Like, maybe, but it could take 20 years. Is that the best deployment of your capital?
It's just a bit of a roulette table, I feel, like Melbourne. It's,
It's got to be careful of Melbs, but
but I mean, not dissing our Melbournians, but I don't. Is that what you say, Melbournians?
Just be careful.
Just be careful.
Just be careful. Yeah.
All right, and in Perth, like I said, I just think there is a lot more migration coming in. There's a lot more money coming in, and it's definitely maybe we're biased, but I do think the stats are saying Perth is where you should be investing, even though it is expensive.
Well, I'm not biased, and I still think Perth is a safe place to put your money in property. I think you just got to be careful what you buy, and what you're chasing. So
So going back to, I guess, the predictions over the next year, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. We've said over the next couple of months, we think that the buyers are coming back. Like, well, that's what the sales agents are saying. We think that the rentals, we think that there's going to be a lot less available. It's going to be increased in value. What do you think the buyers will do then? Do you think investors are going to come back?
Well, I think in a different capacity. My view, like, I think your traditional investor that's buying a second, third, fourth home, I think a lot of those aren't looking at residential right now. They might be looking to alternative markets. They might be looking to more affordable, riskier regional markets. They're looking to get yield. Now the capital growth is kind of off the table a little bit. That's not necessarily a good strategy if you're buying in these really dodgy, volatile regional markets. But what I think is going to happen with investment is, look, Perth's median, call it $1 million. We're pretty much there. Your first home buyer is going to find it really difficult, on a single professional wage, even just to double wage, just to buy the house they want to live in round one. So I think their pathway to home ownership, rent vesting, is definitely,
See, my prediction is still the apartments. I still think those Herdsman Parade apartments.
I'll definitely concede defeat on that one. I agree with you, but I think
Wembley is a great suburb. I think that it's, you're around $1 million properties. You can get something for 400,000. Like, you can renovate it for 50 grand because they're tiny. And for, a single FIFO worker.
Affordability will drive those for sure, as long as the market remains unaffordable. But I think, investors will be there probably more in a rent vesting capacity than a pure, proactive second, third home buyer. Upgraders are going to be really active. Like, these sorts of markets, families don't stop growing. People's dreams don't stop becoming aspirational just because it is what it is. It just gives them the ability to buy what they've got choice now, whereas they didn't have much choice, 6 months, a year ago, 3 years ago. So 7,000 properties, 8,000 properties in the market, still really tight. You've only got, 4,700 established houses. So that's upgraded territory to buy today. So undersupplied. As a total market, we need to be at 13 to 15,000 properties on the market, units, houses, land, to be considered what I would call an equilibrium, where values are sort of going sideways. They're not going up, not going down. But we're so far off that. Like, everyone's worried, oh no, we're at 8,000 properties in the market's going to tank. But if you had told me pre-COVID that our stocks would go down to 7,000, 8,000 properties, I'd be going, guys, that market is going to be really spicy. Watch out. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's...
Well, I did tell you, just to point out, I did tell you we're going to be at 7,800, 8,000
I'll
properties.
bow out. You nailed it, yes.
So I guess my prediction, because I'm the one that's got it right.
Yeah. Oh, let's hear it.
There is going to... I think that we're going to see stats now where it's going to be, oh my gosh, the market's gone down by 10%. I think that's what the stats are going to be. That's what the news is going to be saying in September, October. But based on the fact you mentioned earlier, the shock...
Yeah.
What do you say? The shock time.
It's the shock phase. Yeah.
Shock phase. Yeah. So I think that's what's going to happen. Then I think what's going to happen is that people are going to start buying but offering cheap. I think we're going to be seeing offers come in 50 to 100 grand less, and people still buying because they need to, but then offers being put less, whether they sell or not is another thing. And then I think what we're going to then see is that the rents are going to go up. People still need housing. Investors are going to see how much rents are going to go up, and they're going to go, well, I've got spare cash, because people have still made money. Like, there's a lot of money in Perth, and I just think that they have to put their money somewhere. And I think people are going to start buying again. I wouldn't be surprised if the government does a bit of a 180 on some of the things that they brought in. Yeah. I think they'll incentivise Perth. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they just incentivise Perth, because if you look at the other states, their vacancy is much higher than what Perth is. They're not having... I don't think they're going to have the trauma that we have coming into migration season.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. The only way I can see the sales market...
Did you say I think I'm right?
I think you're right. But maybe for slightly different reasons, but I think your prediction's right. But I think the only way Perth could see a correction is if migration just stops and it goes backwards. So everyone from Ireland, UK...
New Zealanders,
Kiwis, they all just pack up and go because there's no employment. And I think anyone who owns a business or anyone who's worked on a construction site or a mining site will tell you that's pretty hard to just happen overnight. We did see that in 2014, but very different economy now. So that would have to happen. We'd have to double, probably triple the amount of new construction that we're entering into the market, which is actually getting harder. And the problem with construction is, like, we've got a real... Cost is a part of it, but productivity is a massive part of construction as a challenge, because I don't know how many traders do you know that are earning more and working less now. Like, I've got mates that are trades, builders, whatever. A lot of them are just, they're enjoying the higher earning that's coming with the skills of their trade and working less because of it. So they can still earn the same or more working 4 or 3.5 days a week, 3 days a week. And that's great. They're nailing their lifestyle, but we as a country probably need them working 5 days a week to get more homes built, to get this renovation done, to get these jobs finished. And we just can't do that. So how do you do that? And then you've got this rental market that potentially could have another surge. Yeah, it's an impossible problem. It's been this impossible problem for 5 years, 6 years now. So, I mean, Labor taxation policy has taken the heat and the confidence out of the market. But I think once we readjust and understand what the market looks like going forward, I just can't see Perth. That's not a promise. I just can't see how it physically could go down unless you take migration right out of the piece. So
I just think we're going to see increase. I think that maybe the $2 million homes might suffer because they're the ones at the peak.
Yep.
But I do think the bottom of the market, I still think apartments.
Yeah. Well, affordability will see growth, and we've seen that in
good areas. I think good
areas
areas will do well. I think crappy areas will do badly. And I think good areas being whether you're an apartment, house or villa, like it doesn't matter. But I wouldn't probably go and invest in the not so great areas.
Yeah, well, again, it comes down to asset quality, like location, quality of the improvements, what is that going to deliver. Good stuff will always withstand and outperform the market. Bad stuff, they'll be the first to correct, the last ones to pick up. Because how many buyers have you known, or some of our landlords might find fall into this category? It wasn't about finding a good asset. It was just finding anything at any cost.
That's what it was.
And not taking too long to do it. Because if you're 6 months down the road, you've left $100,000 on the table and missed out on that. So it's just about getting something. But that will, if you're making those decisions now, super, super risky. But also, the only piece of advice I'd probably give anyone is that, how would I explain this? If you've got a property that's on the market and you've been eyeballing it and it was asking 1.4, it's still on the market 2 months later, they're now asking 1.2, and you're going in thinking, I can get a deal here, I'm paying $200,000 less, this is a good deal, the house might actually only be worth $1 million. So just because it's being heavily discounted from their asking price doesn't necessarily mean you're getting a good buy. So you've really got to be watching the market, putting your finger on the pulse, asking the right experts to find out where value actually genuinely is, and that discounting from asking prices and perceived as a good buy. So
great. Okay. Well, that's our third podcast done.
Yeah, exciting. So yeah,
I mean, I enjoyed that one.
That's cool. Yeah, because you got to say you were right.
Yeah,
so,
that was really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll finish there.